You're listening to How to 20 Something, the best podcast that helps both men and women navigate their 20s and learn how to adult across all aspects of their lives. We're going to focus on career, relationships, finances, fitness, nutrition, and all of the common challenges and obstacles a typical 20-something will face in this post-college life. I'm your host, Jess Diamond, and I am the CEO and founder of Jess Diamond Coaching, where I help young professionals get their shit together, gain their confidence, and own their life. No one prepares you for this adulting world, so allow me to help you feel like you are no longer a chicken running around with its head cut off, and that you actually know what the hell is going on and what your next step to take is. Welcome to How to 20 Something. Welcome back to another episode of How to 20 Something, where today I brought on a career and executive coach to help you if you happen to find yourself in a toxic work environment. If you've been listening to any of the last few episodes, then you have heard me reference my last few months at F45 and how toxic the management was there. In truth, these owners had a very bad reputation of being psychotic, but I personally try to see the better side of people, only to later find out how much of a toll they were taking on my mental health and my nervous system. But I was lucky in the grand scheme of things, because this was a very part-time job and I rarely had to be face-to-face with these owners. Unfortunately, I know that a lot of people find themselves in a similar, if not way worse, situation and feel stuck in what their options are, knowing they really can't just up and quit their job with nothing lined up. Well, you can, but you need the savings to support you for probably 6 to 9 months, if not more. So I figured, why not bring on someone who can help you turn your shitty situation around and find the signs and symptoms to look out for in an interview process, with the hopes that you don't find yourself in another toxic workplace later on, or even just prevent yourself from ever getting into one in the first place. So Dr. Kristy K. Taylor, founder of Work Solutions, LLC, and Work Global News Magazine, has lectured at Yale University, was named one of Harvard's Women in Higher Educational Leadership, and is a Higher Education Leadership Fellow. A military veteran, author, and certified professional career and executive coach, Dr. Taylor specializes in career branding, DEIA, and organizational development services. She utilizes her work REBT framework to build resilient teams. Dr. Taylor has facilitated workshops for organizations like Walmart and Pathways to Housing DC, and has been a featured guest on multiple podcasts and summits. Hi, Dr. Kristy Taylor, and welcome to How to 20 Something.
Hi, Jess. And I can say that I have 20-something 2 times in my life because I'm in my 40s. So I've done it twice. So I'm coming into this conversation today with lots of experience, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you and sharing some insights with your audience.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear everything you're about to share with me and my audience. So on that note, I want to start with asking you, what is the first thing you would tell someone to do or even think if they believe their workplace is toxic?
Okay, so one of the things is you really have to trust your instinct, right? So I was working a job once where I was like, I'm going to be here for 20 years. And it was toxic from day one. And I felt it in my gut. The vibes were totally off. But I was like, and in fact, it was my first federal job. And I was like, yes, I got to make this a career, right? Before, all of the shifts started to happen. This was a few years ago. So all of these shifts are happening now, but this was a few years ago. And I was like, I'm going to make this work. It was toxic from day one. And I knew it in my gut. And I think that sometimes, I come from a different generation, but sometimes our parents raise us to like, once you get that good job where you can build a career, you stay, right? But you need to trust your gut. You need to trust your instinct. So that's the first thing that I would tell you, that if you feel it from day one, if you feel it in the interview, if you know something is off, don't try to convince yourself that you need this opportunity, right? And you can just survive it. And I get it. Sometimes we need a job because we got to pay the bills, right? But in your 20s, most of the time you might be just graduating college or trade school, whatever it is, and you're still experimenting, trying to figure out what it is that you want to do. And so you just need to trust your instinct going into that situation, and don't try to convince yourself that it's not what you are feeling, that you're seeing this with your own eyes, you are feeling it. And then you are probably wondering why is everybody that they hire why are they leaving so quickly? And you're noticing the patterns. So those are things I would say pay attention to. Trust your gut, notice the patterns, and do not try to convince yourself, well, I have to be here because I have to do this for 2030. You don't have to do anything. You can move on. You don't have to subject yourself. You don't have to survive. Once you tell yourself, I'm going to survive a job, I mean, my God, we survived hurricanes, tornadoes, floods. We shouldn't have to survive a job.
Yeah, I agree. But if someone is in over their head and they're already kind of a couple months in and they feel like they've committed to this job, like what do they do? What is the first thing that they can do to help themselves get out of it, other than the obvious answer of like, oh, go update your resume?
Well, that actually is the answer. So one, you have to accept that, okay, look, because this is the thing, right? You recognize this pattern and you know that this is not the right situation for you. And so the first thing I would say is look for ways to strategically manage your own mental health. Do you need to report it to HR? Do you need to, is it your manager? Like, are there processes within your organization that will allow you to work through that? Because it could be a couple of different things, right? One could be the relationship that you have with your manager and team, which could be causing a toxic environment, or the work environment as a whole. And I've dealt with all of this, because what do you do when the work environment as a whole is toxic, right? Is it going to do you any good to just report it to HR? It's not necessarily, right? So you have to kind of get a lay of the land, understand the dynamics that you're working with, and then take proactive steps to. The second thing would be to take those proactive steps to manage your mental health. Take care of you first, because not everybody is in a situation where you can just quit. Now, I'll tell you a quick story. I remember in my 20s, there was a job that I was working. It was my first job outside of the military, right? And I remember I wanted to interview to become a school teacher, and I was working at a call center at this time. And you know what I did? I wanted to go to this interview so bad, but that job that I was working, they would not let me off. It was not the best environment. I called my mom and was like, "Can I quit?" And my mama said yes. And I walked in and I quit. But that was just luck of the draw, right? Like, not everybody's parents are going to be able to. I was like, "Mom, can I just quit? And if it doesn't work out, if this interview doesn't work out for me to be a school teacher," and I'm happy to say that it did work out, because I walked in, quit, went to the interview, and became a fourth grade school teacher, and did that for a few years. But that was just luck of the draw, right? And so what do you do? Because not everybody, when you're in those environments, can suddenly just go, "Well, I quit," or "I'm gonna call my mom." So you need the first thing is to see what processes, scan the environment to kind of see, is it like the team, is it the culture, because that'll kind of give you some insight into what you can do within the workplace. But then also, I want to say number two, but this is really number one. It's like one and one, neck and neck, right? Take care of yourself. Take those mental steps to take care of yourself and put some boundaries in place. If you know you work from 8 to 5, if the expectation is for you to work from eight to 7, but the hours are 8 to 5, you are going to just have to put some boundaries in place. Turn that phone off at 8 to 5. I know some people now who are forced to go back into the office. And you know what they're doing? They're leaving the phones and the computers at the office, right? Because it's like, well, since I have to be here from 8 to 5, then this is what I'm doing. Because usually I would do more. So put those boundaries in place. And then the third thing really is for you to get that resume together, because you do need to start making a plan to exit, because you can follow the proper protocols for reporting, for taking it up the chain. But again, what if it's the entire workplace culture, right, that's having an impact on you? You have to proactively be taking care of your mental health and making a plan to shift yourself out of that situation strategically, not just based on emotions. Because the truth is, rent is $2,000, wherever you live, right? So you want to have a plan and a strategy. And one thing, the one other thing I would tell you, if you know that you have to kind of ride this out for a little bit, look at all of the benefits of this workplace. Do they pay for you to get to upskill? Like, do they have a professional development fund that you can take advantage of while you're trying to look for your next job? Use all of that, because if they're milking you, milk that situation for what it's worth, and at least get something out of it as you are looking to make your transition. Like, be strategic about it. Don't just do what I did, call my mom and say, "Can I walk in and quit?" Right? If you can, do that. But if you can't, realistically, right, be strategic about how you begin the process of exiting, but make sure that you keep your mental health as a priority.
I'm so glad you said that, because I preach how important it is to plan things out. I have an episode coming out. I think it's, by the time I record this, it's the episode that'll come out after this one, and it's on quitting. And it's like, you need your plan to be a successful quitter. So it's having that in mind. But I want to go back to the setting boundaries, because for a lot of 20 somethings, like, we're so new to our career that it is terrifying to set boundaries. And while, yes, it's like, hey, just fire me, I hate working here anyways, or like, it's not a good environment for me anyway, so I don't care if I lose it. It's like, at the end of the day, we do care, because you're in a lease, you need to pay your bills, like, your life still goes on, and that's part of that plan, is like, you still have to do your job so that you can make that escape plan to get out. So when it comes to those boundaries, what are some ways we can help the 20 somethings be more confident in setting workplace boundaries without that fear of they're going to lose their job, knowing that this is coming from a toxic workplace situation?
Well, one of the things is that you have to learn to you have to work on becoming more emotionally intelligent. And a lot of emotional intelligence, actually, people talk great game about it and read great books, and you can do that. But a lot of that we become more resilient as people because it comes with the experience, and that is actually what helps to develop our emotional intelligence, right? And so putting some of those boundaries in place is like knowing not to respond to something out of emotions. So when you get that sassy email, you know, take a step back, don't respond immediately, right? Don't instigate it. Like, even now, as someone who's a coach and who's still, I'm actively in the workplace still, take a step back before you respond to something that emotionally triggers you, and craft a more strategic approach to it, because that is one of the pitfalls, right? When we kind of be in these environments and we're getting these nasty grams, as I would say, you want to respond, or you kind of spend all day in your head replaying I should have said this, to coulda, woulda, or I should have did this, right? But you have to just know that the energy we put out is the energy that we get back. So we have to lead with some level of kindness, right? Because what does it matter if you're already making a transition, that Becky emailed you at 2:15, and said something snarky to you? You get off at 3. Just let it sit there. And the other thing is, like, when you are being given tons and tons of work, and it's like, well, you already gave me. And I think that especially in my 20s, that's something I dealt with, where I'm trying to learn to move up. I'm trying to build a career. These are things I want. And then the work is piling up. And that is where a big piece of not setting boundaries really came back to burn me, because you get burnt out. And I noticed this with a lot of my younger clients. So you have to go to that supervisor and go, so, we have these competing priorities, right? You can say it in a non-emotional way. So think about this, though. So if I'm your supervisor, and I'm giving you 4 projects that are all back to back, you're going to feel so overwhelmed with that, right? And for you, I would recommend, and if you came to me, it's like, I cannot do this. It's so much. It stressed me out." What if you came to me as your supervisor? Well, you can come to me like that, just, because I'm compassionate, I understand. But some people you can't. But if you come to the supervisor, and it's kind of like, okay, so we have 4 projects that are competing priorities, and I know that each one of these is top priority, right? But I'm not going to be able to land this plane without us having actually choosing a priority. So there's only 40 hours in a work week. Which one of these would you like me to deliver first? Right? Going in there and rationalizing with that individual. And then you also, when you work in a toxic work environment, you need to just make sure that you're keeping great email documentation. Okay. And the biggest thing about these environments is managing your emotions. The other thing is the pressure to respond. And I love this. If you feel, so I say, don't respond to some emails, but then sometimes we get these emails at the end of the day and we're still trying to prove ourselves as a hard worker. You might craft an email or do a project, but don't show that you were working past 5 o'clock if that's your hours. Schedule the email to go off, to be sent off at 10 o'clock the next morning. Or, you see what I mean? Schedule it. Don't be, if I get off at 5, I'm not sending emails after 5 o'clock. So you have to learn to understand your landscape and manage your emotions. Don't bust if you already know it's a toxic environment, don't bust in the supervisor's office and go and just let them see all of these emotions. Just manage it and say, you've given me multiple projects this week, and realistically, some of these things I'm not going to be able to get done. So which one would you like me to prioritize? Right, and then keep it strictly between 8 and 5. If it's that toxic of an environment, even if you have to send the email to go out at 8:01 the next morning, right? Show no weakness.
Yeah, I will say managing your emotions and your reactions is probably going to be one of the toughest things because you're already on high alert, you're already unhappy, there's already negative emotions boiling inside of you. And when you get that email from that person that is not treating you well or that you do not get along well with, you're already reading that email with a story, and that story is them in a bad light, of them like nitpicking you or nagging you or yelling at you or just being a bitch to you, like whatever it is, you already have that in your head when you go to read an email, and that's only going to enhance your emotions and like your emotional response to that email or to that text or to that phone call. So it is reminding yourself, I still have to remind myself of this, that even with a friend, that I need to not respond when I'm feeling any emotion besides excited or happy or neutral. So if there's any anxiety or stress or sadness or anger that's in me, I constantly have to remind myself of like, hey, don't respond, because it's not going to be with your best thought process coming forward. It's not going to come across well. You have to separate yourself and your emotions from the situation and from the workplace. And that comes with taking a break, taking a time out, taking a breath, and coming back when you are at that net neutral ground, like ground zero of, okay, I'm not feeling reactive anymore. I can now compose a message that I can send to this person and not have any emotional attachments to that message either.
I think that we should go into jobs like we're consultants. That's kind of how I look at every job, right? Like no matter what job I'm in, it's like I'm a consultant here. So it's kind of like at the end of the day, the check is going to clear. And what is it that you would like me to do? And I will deliver on that. I think what ends up happening to us is that we get so, especially when you're in your 20s, you get so overly invested. And I work in social impact. And people can get so overly invested in their emotions, and consider yourself as a consultant. They're paying you to do a thing. And then that allows you to separate yourself. I have been in situations where I got great ideas about how to move something, how we can move forward, and the no will hit me right in the face. And you have to be prepared for that, right? And I'm like, I'm okay with no. Because at the end of the day, this is my job, but I'm more of a consultant. Because think about it, you're only going to be in these positions for 2 or 3 years or a year or two, and then you move on. Even if you stay for 20 years, you're a consultant. If you consider yourself like that, where I'm taking ownership, but then there's a level of guidance. And then the other piece I would tell you too, to your point about when you work in a toxic work environment, not only controlling your emotions about how you respond, but also who you talk to. Keep in mind that you have no friends in your workplace. That's just my perspective. I definitely have people that I've connected with, gotten along with as colleagues. And in my younger days, I will say, because I was and when I first started my career, I was in the military. It was like best job of my life, working in the internal medicine clinic. It was about 15 of us in that clinic. They were all in the ages of 19 to 24. It was the best job, but so we got to grow and learn together. So in that piece, there was no frenemies type of thing, right? Because I think the military is a totally different vibe. But as I've gone out into my career, once I left, I got out when I was about 24, got off of active duty and had to enter the we would say public sector workplace, these corporate environments. Then you started learning a little bit different. So part of your what you owe to yourself is to have you a support system outside of work, where when it's all burning down and it's like total hot shit, then you have somebody that you can call. But you definitely don't want to vent to a person in a workplace, because you might think that they're safe because they're having a bad day too. But then that can come back to haunt you. At work, the consultant doesn't engage in that, right? You as the consultant don't engage. You as the person, whatever you consider yourself, it's just like, okay. And then that helps you to manage your emotions. I know for me, once I started looking at myself like, you know what, I'm more of a consultant. Like I'm going to do an excellent job on everything, but I know that I'm dispensable. Keep that in mind. And that kind of helps you. There's no reason to feel like you got to respond right away to somebody's passionate email that was probably disrespectful. And also, depending on who that person was, you can also consult with your supervisor or again, unless the person is your supervisor, right? So just know how to manage and maneuver through those types of conversations.
Yeah, I love that you said like don't gossip or vent to your coworkers because you really don't know what they could have a hidden agenda. As you said, it could come back to bite you. And just another way to think about it is you're adding toxicity to the already toxic situation. So don't be that extra dose. There's already enough there. We want to remove yourself from it. So that is part of that is like finding that support system outside of your work that you can vent to that is not going to come around and bite you in the butt later on where it's like, oh, you were talking blah, blah, blah about so-and-so and and it just gets messy because then the other person's not going to own up and be like, yeah, I was also contributing to that conversation because that they'll just be throwing themselves under the bus. And at the end of the day, everyone is in it for themselves. Doesn't matter how helpful someone is or how nice or how friendly, they are in it for themselves. They're going to protect themselves before they protect you.
1000% right. Oh my gosh. And I've seen this because with my background being in social impact, I have taught a lot of healthcare classes. My doctorate is in health science, but I focus on career coaching so much that people have forgotten what my actual role is. I work in HR, doctorate in health science. But used to tell my students, even when you have bad days at work, don't vent about it on social media. Don't add people from your job to your social media. And even when you leave, you can find me on LinkedIn, but I'm probably not going to add you. I'm not adding you on Facebook, right? I think you should, you, this is just my perspective, right? You take ownership of the roles that you have, but always look at yourself like being dispensable. And then the second thing is like you have to be in two different modes. And I know if you work from home, it's super hard to separate the two, but you have to have your work life and you have to have your regular life. And your regular life is where your support system is, the people who you come to. I have my best friend, and when stuff is a hot mess, I don't care if it's 10 o'clock at night. I will call her. I don't care. I don't care if I have to just send her a voice message, like instead of a text, right? It could be 12. But you got to have a person that you can vent to because, as you said, right, that workspace is really just focused on work. Get the job done, and then 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whenever you leave, log off. But even if you working a little extra, don't unless it was to meet a deadline, like you had to get it in that day. It like if I work if I get up at 5 and I'm working, sometimes I'll work to 6 or 7 o'clock. I'm gonna schedule an email to go out 9 o'clock the next morning, right? Because that was my choice to work those extra hours, not because I'm being forced to, because
Yeah, and you don't want to set that expectation of,
right.
I stayed on till 7 because a lot of employers would be like, well, you stayed on till 7 this time, so you should be able to stay on till 7 every single day. And it's like, no. So yeah, I think it's more so of don't set the expectations that you don't want to uphold.
That was the perfect wording for it. Because sometimes when you're in a learning curve, you will work a little extra. And this is the thing about me being a coach, right? Because some coaches will be like, no, if you work from 8 to 5, you work. Yes, I'm like that. But I also know that you might be experiencing a learning curve. There might be something, sometimes you are there. But because you don't want to set the expectation, don't feel compelled like, well, I need to send this email to let them know that I was working at 8:30 at night. No, you don't. Just schedule it to go out at 9, something more natural, 9 or 10 the next morning. But I don't even want to get into that dynamic with you because if you're in a toxic work environment, your focus should not be working, learning that extra piece, right? Your focus is managing my mental health, creating my plan to exit. And if they have an opportunity for me to upscale while I'm here, since they are milking me, I'm going to milk them. I'm going to get that extra certification, take a class, whatever. So think about it like that.
Well, we've been saying toxic work environment a lot so far through this episode, but can you, in your own words, define what that is? You can give examples. So I know it's going to vary depending on what it is. You mentioned like it could be the environment itself, it could be a supervisor, it could be HR, it could be anything. But
It's literally anything that you just listed. Those are the things. Okay, so look, because first of all, when you go into these companies, you should research. A lot of times we're so excited to get a job that we don't look on places like PayScale, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, right? And when you go into the interview, I pay attention. How is the interview process? Again, is the vibe off? Like, so going into that, are they, when you go into an interview, or even if you get the job, maybe the interview went great, you get the job, because this could happen either way, and they're trashing folks that used to work there to you during the interview, or maybe you went to orientation and they're trash. How was the orientation? Oh my God. Was that a good experience for you? Okay. Oh, my all-time favorite, which is usually a telltale sign. Welcome to the team, Jess. We're a family here.
oh,
And it's like, okay. And then that is going to tell you up front, like, okay, how much family are we? Because is that whole, like, that work-life balance thing where you're expecting me to work to 7 or 8, 9 o'clock at night because we're so family? No, you're right. Or you have to keep asking, and I'm just telling you the stuff that's up front, right? You have to keep asking, okay, so what exactly is my role? Because this was the job description, right? But you're a little unclear of what your role is, or another. Everybody here works hard, plays hard, right? We work long hours, we play, and they're excited to tell you that this is a hustle culture. We work hard, play hard, everybody's on the grind. No, that means everybody's burnt out. So those are some of the things that telling you a little bit about the culture. You're asking questions, you're not, and I'm talking about in the very beginning, right? You're asking questions, the information is inconsistent. And I mean, and overall, people just look miserable. So pay attention to that. You're touring the building and people just look miserable. And then there's no boundary. We talked a lot about the time. I remember being a supervisor and being that person sending emails at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I thought I was being an example supervisor. No harm intended, but it was causing harm. Because I thought, well, I'm leading by example because I just want them to know that I'm working. That was not good. Okay, looking back on that, no. And this is why I've totally reversed that. I mean, in terms of the communication, like overbearing. I once had a supervisor who would text me, call me, email me, and it would be like in this sequence. One time, it was so bad. One morning, I literally rolled out of the my own driveway and hit a parked car because I was so like, oh my God, it is 6 in the morning and she had already sent like 3 emails. So the poor leadership, which we already know, are you getting micromanaged? Is it clear that the boss is playing favorites with people? Are people allowed to take credit for your work? Because we've had that where frontally is like, we're a team, but you did all the work, right? And then you aren't gonna be able to do that for so long. And I think the last couple of things I would say is how you're feeling. I mean, are you feeling burnt out? Are you feeling drained or exhausted? And then there are the operational things that we pay attention to in these organizations. Like, again, pay attention. Are people, as soon as people are hired, they're quitting, right? Is there not, if you get the job and you ask about opportunities to grow your career, because maybe you coming in, it's like that answer's vague, and you get there and you clearly see that there's no path forward. And that's what you should be looking for in your 20s. You're looking for that path forward and opportunity. And the last thing I'm going to say, because I know it's controversial right now, but there's no diversity. You don't want to work with people who all look the same and think the same, right? We want diverse perspective. We want to work with, well, just me, at least I would say, I want to work with people from different cultures, diverse perspectives. I want to know that as a woman that I can move up in the organization, that I can. So those are the things that you should be checking. Okay, because I feel like I've been waiting somebody to ask this question all your life. Oh, my life, right? And so when you kind of get that little feeling of this is not right, you should be asking yourself a couple questions like, do I feel safe here? Is this a place I can grow? And most importantly, do I feel respected? And if you don't, that's when you start making sure you're taking care of your mental health. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to be here long.
Yeah, there's so much I could unpack from everything you just said because well, I just have examples of I had a client who was interviewing with a company. I'm not going to say it's a known company, so I'm not going to say the name. Interviewing with the company, made it to second round, third round, fourth round, and then they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to have an answer for you by Friday. Friday comes, no answer. They're like, oh, on Monday, reach out. Hadn't heard back. It's like, oh, we'll have an answer for you later this week. And it was just like stringing him along. And I explained to him, I was like, they're treating you like they're the fuck boy. That they're like, yeah, I mean, like, I'll hit you up when I want to, but like,
Yeah,
just
not
have like
restricted.
you're my side piece. Like, you're not the real
To
thing.
go through 4, 5, 6 interviews. This is something I tell my clients, right? First of all, if you go to the interview and they say this is the biggest red flag ever, if they go, because think about this: if you work in tech or process improvement, where they want you to do like, build a workflow or something, and they say, "Great job, Jess. What we want you to do for the next round of interviews is we're going to give you a project, and we want you to build a sample model, da da da." Right? And it's like, you want me to work for free? Because most likely that project is a problem that's happening within their organization. And I had a client and I told him that. I said, hey, they have tests, they have things that they can do to test your skill set. Plus, you're coming in here with a strong resume and great references with people who can attest that you know how to build these workflows. It's very apparent. I said, if you go to that interview and they give you a project that takes you 3 hours, they're looking for free work. And you know what? The client did it anyway. And you know what happened? They took his project and then told him, oh, we're going to continue to interview other people. And I was like, what they just got from you was free work. So pay attention to that, because that is something that gets so many of my younger clients caught up, older too. Because I have to say, like, look, it's one thing for them to give you like an actual test or to be asking you questions during the interview, right? And even if me working in higher education, they'll want to see like a sample teaching, and that's okay. But if you ask me to put together an entire project, then you should be paying me as a consultant. That tells you too a lot about the work environment. You shouldn't have to do 5, 7, 10 interviews for what? $100,000, $80,000? You know what I mean? No.
Yeah, well, I think the hardest part is that you don't know what you don't know. And being in your 20s there's a lot of career development and learning experiences that are come your way. And we want to help you guys mitigate some of the pitfalls that maybe we've experienced. We don't want that for you. But I know from the mindset of I just want a job, because I was in that position when I graduated college. I spent the whole summer interviewing places, not hearing back, just trying to get that first job, that first foot through the door that I accepted the first one I could get. Luckily, it was not toxic, but it was less than ideal. I was still unhappy. It wasn't draining me emotionally, but I was bored out of my mind. But it is hard. It's hard to not want to just take that first job that gives you a bite, because you're like, I just want something. I want something because something is better than nothing. And that's where Dr. Kristy and I are trying to tell you, like, no, sometimes nothing is better than the toxic something. And you do need to trust your gut and listen to your instincts. And if you're not enjoying the interview process, if you're feeling anxious, it's similar to dating. If you're feeling anxious when you're first starting out dating someone, they are not for you. If you are feeling anxious, waiting to hear back from an interviewer that said they would get back to you on Friday and you heard nothing, and all of a sudden it's 8 p.m. on Friday and you're shitting your pants through the whole weekend, it is not a job for you. And you have to acknowledge that and own that and move on.
Because I remember when I got my first teaching job, right? And the principal was like, I'm going to call you on Friday. I had already quit my job. So here's the thing. They're not going to always follow up with you on that Friday. But to your point, it's about managing your emotions, right? You can email them and say, because actually in that situation, she hired somebody to teach the first grade and she fired the person who was teaching fourth grade and gave me their job. So I ended up with a better situation, right? Because I love my fourth graders. So in that case, it's about managing your emotions. You've gone through this interview process. This is what happens. People, because you're right, you need that job. And I see even people my age do this. You need that job so bad, so you start to get emotionally attached to it. This has to be the one. This is the interview was so good, right? And then they don't, and that is why on Friday at 8 o'clock you want to go to a happy hour that lasts all weekend because you're depressed, right? Because you did that to yourself, and that is why, right? Because you need that job so bad that you like, you know what? They I put my resume in and they called me the next day. And so the interview went. So what happens when they don't call you back? So you have to just look at every interview as an opportunity. Hey, I just was in a situation where I lost my job and I had to start over this year. So, it's like, okay, every person, but I guess I'm seasoned enough now as a coach where it's like not every interview, but I have been like that before where it was like I needed a job. And so I just noticed it was like call all your friends and be like, hey, I know that they're gonna call me back. And then they don't call you by Friday at 5. But who did that? You did that to yourself. So you have to look at that opportunity. It's just like, okay, if it was for me, they're gonna call. But what you gotta do, and that's the military department, you gotta keep moving, right? And you gotta say, okay, oh well, because in that situation, hey, I was called back with a better job, because it didn't happen exactly the way I want. And the other thing I was gonna say in response to you is you are so right. When you are desperate for a job, it's like, okay, I'm gonna just take the first thing that they offer. Now, here's the one thing I'm gonna say, because I always say don't move any emotion. Consider your options there, right? And so at that point in time, it might not be another option, but like you say, it's a job where you were not necessarily miserable, right? And so you needed a job. So in those cases, as a coach, I would say, okay, you took it as a start point. It's just a life comes in ebbs and flows, and sometimes the ebb, you just have to take the ebb because as long as it is not toxic, then you have to look at your own mindset and go, you know what? This is not what I want to be doing right now, but I can learn something from this experience. It's going to help me to build my resume. When I first got out of the military and I was working at that call center in my 20s, oh my God, it sucked. Okay, I I had a master's degree. I thought I was so clueless. I got in the military, and I tell this story all the time about how like I was on active duty, did not have a clue, thought that I was getting out of the military and was like, yeah, I have my master's degree that Uncle Sam has paid for, and I'm gonna get my first job. This was in 2008, making $60,000. Okay, first of all, I was so clueless. Could not find a job to save my life. I feel like I put in 1,000 applications. And I remember going to this temp agency, and I go in there high and mighty, and I'm telling you just like this. Yes, I have my master's degree, and because I was 24, and I'm looking for a job that pays $60,000 a year, and the lady was like, "We ain't got that." I was like, "Okay, 55. No, we don't. Okay, 50, 45, 40." And I'm seriously like 39 or 35. Ended up being like $28,000 a year or whatever. But and I was like, well, 28,000. And I literally was just going. I went from 60 to 28,000. She was like, yeah, we have something like that, and it was a call center. And I was like, oh my God. But I took it, right? But in that meantime, to build my skill set up, I was volunteering. I'm a health educator, health scientist by trade. So I was volunteering. I was doing all of the things around it so that I could build my skill set up. Cause I was like sleeping on somebody's couch at the time. I needed to get an apartment, a place to live. I had to get a job, right? So just sometimes we have to make those decisions, but continue to do the things that's going to build your skill set up. So I was volunteering as a health educator in the community and working on getting my teaching license. And then within I didn't even work that job. I worked it 6 months. And the universe always pays it forward when you do the work to work on yourself and continue to evolve and keep a positive attitude. So by the time I walked in there and was like, hey, called my mom, was like, can I quit, please? And bet it all, I had the credentials in place, and I had some different experiences because I had been volunteering. So that's my point, right? Sometimes you do kind of have to take that job that comes as long as they ain't making you miserable. Because it went towards the end till it was making me miserable. But when I first got it, I was just glad to have a job.
Yeah, but like even still, you were building your escape plan outside of that job.
Yep, and that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, I want to focus on the interview process was clean. The first 6 months of the job was great, and just well, maybe it's like new management took over. Maybe it's just you're in a different position. Maybe you're moved to a different team. Maybe it just all of a sudden the honeymoon phase is done, and you are realizing you are pretty deep into not a great workplace situation. How can someone tell the difference between being resilient and staying somewhere that's actively harming their growth and well-being? Because there's both types of stress that are happening. There's both levels of unhappiness, but how do you tell whether it's like, oh, I need to be resilient and this will help me grow, or this is actually harming me and is not helping me grow?
It goes back to what the very first answer that I gave you. First of all, I guarantee just it didn't just pop up positive as today is toxic, right? It was there, but the whole 6 months, you know how you meet that guy or person that you're dating, and it's like, oh, this is the one, she's the one, he's the one, and you just so in love because all the butterflies, and then all of a sudden, he says something crazy to you, or you say something crazy, and it's just it throws off the vibe. See, the toxicity was there all along, but you were so in the romantic phase that you didn't see it. Unless we do now, there are some instances where leadership changes, right? And they usher in a toxic era. Because I've had that too. Great work environment. We get new leadership and we walk into a toxic era. That one I'm gonna answer for you straight on. If you start to see that shift and you know that you don't want to deal with that, you need to start making an exit plan. Your work life is not an episode of survival. People misconceive what resiliency is. We feed ourselves a narrative, and this is where I'm also a mindset coaching. This is where when you talk about my framework is the REBT stands for rational emotive behavior therapy. And I'm going to correct something here. That framework is called the REBTDEIA framework. I changed the name to the work REBT framework because I wanted to be politically correct, but I'm just going to change that shit back to what it was, okay, which is the REBTDEI framework, because we need diversity of thought and diversity of people. But the most important component here is rational emotive behavior therapy, which I challenge clients to take a deep dive into understanding what is causing you to feel the way that you feel. And I want to just make sure that you understand that sometimes we convince ourselves that we have to go through something to become more resilient. Life is going to naturally throw a lot of bullshit at you. And I'm only cussing because you let me, right? It's naturally going to throw a lot of BS at you. Why would you want to put yourself through something to show that, I mean, I get it. If I'm in the military, I'm going through boot camp. That was a choice, right? That I made. But we convince ourselves like, I have to be in this. No, because life is going to happen. It's crappy enough. And through the experiences that you have in life, like even when you take a shot on yourself or you do something that you've never done, those are going to be the natural experiences that will help you to become more resilient and to mature and become more emotionally intelligent. So I don't know why people think that I have to be in a work environment and I have to survive this. I have like I'm on some island because that's going to help me to be more resilient. So first of all, just redefine what it is to be resilient. Resiliency comes through experience, but it doesn't have to be always self-imposed experiences, right? And once you can distinguish that, then it goes back to that question, the way that I answered that question earlier. You see all the signs, you have the gut feeling, then you just need to follow that process of taking care of your mental health and start to transition out. And if you can't transition out immediately, right? Then you have to make sure that you are strategically managing the boundaries, that you are making sure you're taking care of your mental health. And it is just a place where I clock in, I do the job, I go home because I'm here for the check, nothing else. I'm still gonna always look because that's the truth, right? Like you can make a strategic plan, but it might take 6 months, a year to find a job. And so you have to be taking care of yourself and managing that, but don't feed yourself the BS line that I have to survive this like I'm on some island. No, you don't. You don't have to be disrespected, right? Because life is gonna throw enough. Live long enough. You're gonna become more resilient naturally.
Yeah, it's funny because with my F45 situation, it was new management took over, like new owners bought the franchise of the studio that I was working at, and it came with the reputation that they are crazy. And they were. And right at the start, I was going through my own personal things, and they were making all of these changes with no explanation, and it was very abrupt, as in within the first 5 days of them taking over, they wanted to change everything. And I was like, I do not have the capacity to put up with this. So I actually talked to the female owner and was like, hey, I'm going to put in my 2 weeks. And she was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why? Like, because mind you, at this point, 6 trainers had already quit the second these owners took over. It was a whole thing. But she's like, what's going on? Like, why? What can we do? And we actually talked it out. We had a 20-minute conversation. I felt heard. I understood her perspective. There was actual communication happening. And I was like, okay. And I stuck it out for a year and a half. And then at the start of this year, it blew up. I don't know what changed besides their level of craziness, but it just escalated so much that I was under that level of stress again. I'm like, this is supposed to be my fun, turn my brain off, socialize, collect money, get out job. It should not be causing me the level of stress and unhappiness that it is. And that was when I made that decision of, okay, well, it's not getting better. The communication is zero with these owners. It's only passive aggressive and they won't hear you out. There's no compromise. Like, it's their way or the highway. And I was like, okay, taking the highway then. I'm out. Like, it is time for me to go. But I'm in my late 20s and I'm able to recognize when it's time for me to leave and also be in a position where it was a part-time job and I can survive on income that I have from my business and from personal training. But at the same time, I don't know if younger me would have been able to have that wherewithal or that strength to leave. Because yes, there's strength in building up your resiliency and trying to see something through and being like, no, this will make me stronger. But there's also strength in getting out. And it's protecting yourself. It's going back to like making that plan. And I'll remind you guys of my mental motto that I've used sporadically throughout the years of it's not forever, it's for now. Go through it right now, but know that you have an end date. Create the end date, create the plan, and take action towards it so that you do get yourself out of this situation because it's not helping you.
Yeah, my motto literally is it'll be different 6 months from now. My sister knows that she comes to me with something, or when I always say, because it comes in ebbs and flows, right? And sometimes you're in the flow, and then sometimes it's ebb up. I've been through it, and I'm going through it. Like, from a health perspective, you know about the dimensions of wellness. I always say, if you look at the dimensions of wellness, it's always like you got this 8 slices of pie, right? Your intellect, physical, emotional. Somebody's always taking a bite of a slice of pizza of your pizza pie. It's something always happening. I would say one piece of advice that I would give to you, because I don't know your situation personally, right? But I think that one piece that applies to each of us is like, you saw that toxicity up front and all these people leaving, and you spoke up for yourself, which was the good thing, right? But where it went left was you saw it, you spoke up for yourself, and you got comfortable in the comfortable. And in over that year and a half, I would have been, okay, what can they offer me here? Because you have to know that if life comes in ebbs and flows, so does work. And so they listen, but at some point it's going to transition. I'm used to change because in the military, like every 2 years we get a new commander. Thank God I've always had great people that I've worked with, but it could go from like you being in a great environment to get a new commander who's like totally, that person could be toxic as a leader. Now, I've never had that, but I'm just saying, I'm just showing you like the rate of change that can happen even in environments where I've worked in. But what happened was you got comfortable in that flow because you had that 20-minute conversation, which was positive. You spoke up for yourself. And hey, I did that this year. Look, I had a job. I was so comfortable. I was like, yeah, and this year I'm going to be doing beauty pageants. I'm going to be traveling and doing all of this stuff. And then like I walked in one day and the job was gone. And I'm like, wait a minute. You know what I mean? And so we all make that mistake of just getting comfortable in the comfortable. But that's why I say you have to kind of look at yourself like, okay, I'm a consultant here. Because then you don't get caught up in that environment. And then when something crazy happens, when it loops back around, it's like, wait a minute. Okay, well, you've already shown me that you do this. This is before. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave. On that note, I'm gonna leave, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, like, because they showed their true colors up front, and
yeah,
but I felt heard, and I know, I can recognize I got comfortable, and I think a big trap that we fall into is we're not in a great situation, but either we don't know how to plan that exit, or we're afraid of what's next could be worse. And that's what keeps us in this stuck, like, no, it's okay, I'll put up with it. Like this, so it's fine for right now. I'm comfortable with this level of toxicity because I fear that if I go somewhere new, it's just going to be worse. And maybe this is how it's supposed to be. Maybe this is how work life is supposed to be. And Dr. Kristy and I are here to tell you it's not. And your job should not be causing you all of this stress if you're not a doctor or a surgeon or a lawyer and you have like other people's lives on the line. It's marketing. You're in a marketing job or you're working at a bank. It is not that
mindset,
weird.
right? You should not have to. Why are we settling for this bull crap when we're telling ourselves, well, I mean, it's only a little toxic. Like, why are we doing it? And it's because we need to. There are a million side hustles out here, okay? You can find, but we get comfortable in the comfortable. And you got to ask yourself, like, why am I comfortable with just, oh, it's only a little toxic? You know what I mean? Like, no, I got to be here for 8 hours a day or 5 hours a day. How long? I don't need any toxic. Okay? I don't need any toxicity. I mean, now look, in a workplace, there's going to be different dynamics because you're dealing with people. And so every now and then, conflict is a natural thing. But every day, no ma'am, don't have no turkey. I'm not doing it. And so I think that too, you have to value yourself and examine your own mindset so that it's kind of like, okay, look, I'm worth 1,000 more. I am working here now because I need the cash. All right. But I am going to figure out there is plenty of part-time opportunity. I'm going to figure out how to move on this, but just never get comfortable in the comfortable. Because even if you felt her, they already showed you who they were, right? And so
Yeah. Well, I have one final question to wrap up this episode for you. And it's, are there any final piece of advice or just words of wisdom that you want to share with the 20 somethings listening who are feeling stuck in their career situation, even if it's not a toxic situation, but they just feel stuck with where they're at? What are some words you have for them?
Myron Golden says, so I can't take credit for this, is that work is always working. It's either working for you or working on you. And it's funny because I call my business Work Solutions, right? But what he's really referring to is the energy is always working. Energy, your efforts that you put into something. So if you are in a situation where you're feeling stuck in your career, look for other opportunities to develop yourself. Look at your transferable skills, because if you're doing things like administration, project management, managing a schedule, managing people, those are things that you can take with you and move to. You can transition. And so, whereas in the past, in my generation, the career was more kind of just like baby boomers, where I'm expected to get a job and work. And I'm a millennial, but I'm expected to get this job, work there, be there for 30 years. But I mean, I got kids that I taught that are getting rich off of TikTok. So it's your career trajectory is a different path than what previous generations were. You can go out there and become viral in an instant, your life changes. So what I'm saying is, don't limit your own potential because you feel like that you need to be glued to a company, glued to this seat. Your talents itself, when you ball them up, they are transferable, and you need to look at yourself as an asset. And it's not just what you bring to that company, it's also what this company does for you. And you, sometimes our biggest inhibitor or roadblock is our mindset. So think about this: in this economy, there might not be currently in a lot of upward mobility, right? Because there's a lot of people looking for jobs. But guess what? This happened in 2008. This happened before. History repeats itself over and over again. So what you should be doing in the downtime is to be preparing yourself, upskilling. I'm always taking classes on places like Udemy. always leveraging transferable skills. So that is what I would tell as a piece of final advice, that the energy is always working. It's either working on you, meaning if you have a mindset where you feel like this is what you have to settle for, then that's what you're going to get. Right. But once you start to move in a different direction to control the dynamics that you can, because you can't always change the immediate, but you can control some internal factors, then eventually that energy that you put out will start to propel you forward.
Love it. Thank you, Dr. Kristy, for being a guest on How to 20 Something and sharing all of your words of wisdom with us. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
All right, I'm gonna tell you the two simplest ways to find me. Worksolutions.com. You can type in www.work.com, and that can be hit or miss, but Work Solutions, WORXK is what I meant to say. WORXK.com or WORXKsolutions.com, right? And then on social media, we're Work Solutions on all social media. And then you can find me on Instagram at Dr.Kristy Taylor.
All right, and her information will be listed in the show notes for you guys to access. But this does conclude another episode of How to 20 Something. If you liked what you heard, if you learned something new, or if you or someone you know is in a toxic work environment and needs help getting out, then please pass this episode along. Share with a friend, post it on social media. Just help me help as many 20-somethings as I can. And as always, I can't wait to be in your headphones again next week with another brand new episode.